I believe that we should all have the time and energy for the things that matter most to us. And the reason I'm saying this is because during my PhD, I struggled with certain aspects of my mental health. So I had high levels of anxiety and stress. I lacked a sense of meaning and purpose. And since then, I've invested a lot of resources in learning how to cope with my mental health. And so I view it as my duty now to share the knowledge and experiences that I've learned over these years with all of you so that you can transform the way you work and live and be effective researchers. So I first want to start off by with this disclaimer by saying I'm not offering medical advice in this talk. I believe the Mental Health Initiative, they have a number of videos already online, and some of the talks have already talked about some of this. So please consult your healthcare provider. But I will say that some of the things that I will be talking about is definitely based on science and research. So with that, I'd like to first introduce myself a little more. So I'm a father of 2 girls, and it's absolutely amazing. We sing, we dance, we laugh. It's full of joy and happiness, but at the same time, it's really emotionally demanding. It's really exhausting, and it's a roller coaster. I'm also a postdoc at TU Berlin, where I work on security, so telecommunication security, but I also most recently I'm looking into human factors and mental health and cybersecurity as well. And recently this year, I became a certified high flow coach. And so if you're wondering what flow is a state of optimal experience where we feel and perform our best. And what that means is we lose sense of time. Whatever we are doing feels effortless. We're in the zone. We sort of get lost in whatever we are doing. And my role as a high flow coach is to help people find more flow. And last year, I also wrote an ebook called The 3 Pillars to Transformative Productivity and Wellbeing. So that's a little bit about myself. Maybe towards the end of the talk, we can have a Q&A, and then I'd like to get to know more about all the people who are here today. So this is the outline I have for today. I'd like to talk about some of the personal struggles I faced during my PhD, in particular from the time I started in 2015, and then what led to a transformation within myself, and what all of you could do today to transform the way you work and live. And when I talk about mental health today, I'm not necessarily referring to the clinical conditions of depression and other mental health conditions, but I'm talking about anxiety, stress. These are also triggers and symptoms of burnout, but also the aspect of mental health where people flourish. So positive psychology, which is the science of flourishing. And so we're going to see how we can handle certain aspects of anxiety and stress, and also how we can actually thrive in an environment so that we can actually be effective and do some awesome research. And so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we can discuss that towards the end. All right, so let's start with some of my personal struggles. And so I went into academia right after my master's at UC Davis, and I was so impressed by the environment, which I found intellectually stimulating, and it felt like pursuing a PhD is like this bird where you're flying high up in the sky, you're free, you're independent, it feels really nice. But on the other hand, what I didn't expect was the frustration, the stress, the exhaustion, and all these other things that make it a little more challenging and difficult to get through. And so I see, at least in my experience, like N equals 1 is that it's sort of like these 2 aspects. It's quite on two ends of the spectrum. And so what I'd like to do now is talk about some of those few struggles that I faced that had a pretty big impact on me. So the first one is that of workload. So initially when I started, there wasn't so much. I was willing to take on a lot of work. And after about a year and a half, when the momentum started picking up, I had a paper and I had a couple more ideas in the pipeline. Um, the workload started to increase, and then combined with teaching duties, and then supervising student theses and projects, and then there was like writing all these grant proposals, presentations for conferences or workshops, and then I think the most stressful part for me, which is something I learned only through experience and then um, reading up on things and speaking to other people, was how to handle submission deadlines. Because I noticed that there were like a couple of submission deadlines which were so stressful for me that I was able to pull through till the submission deadline, but after that I'd fall sick and get a fever, or then I had some issues with my digestive system and so on. And these were really stressful, and it didn't feel good at all. And that this high workload combined with the lack of boundaries really exacerbated my situation. So um, I'd end up working long hours and even over the weekends, especially when we had to do experiments. And this was combined with the workload, right? So I was feeling anxious. Oh, will I get the results right? Will it be accurate or not? I'll have to do this. Oh, will we make the submission deadline? And then there was the aspect of checking emails outside work hours. So I'd have email on my phone. I'd be like, oh, keep checking email. If there was a break, I'd check email on my phone. What was, I think now looking back, it seems crazy because I'd wake up in the middle of the night and check my email look for my phone and check my email and then go back to sleep. And that to me was not so healthy. And I think the other part about checking emails, which was sort of anxiety inducing, but also wanting this sort of reward, right? Was during paper notifications, because they'd say, okay, we'd get notified on this day, but we don't know what time. And so I'd just end up checking my email all the time, which was really not helpful and healthy at all. And then there was the health aspect. So I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes. I'm not a smoker anymore. I quit. I used to drink copious amounts of coffee, like double espressos. There was this paper we were working on, which was actually a really interesting piece of research, but it demanded a lot. And so I assumed that by drinking a lot of coffee, I'd be able to focus better and stay alert. But what happened was the complete opposite. I ended up feeling more tired and exhausted. My sleep quality was reduced, and it wasn't really working out for me. And the worst part was when I noticed that my eyes started to twitch. And that set off an alarm in me, and I realized, okay, I need to do something about this. The third part of health, and so, was social relationships. I was so focused on getting my work done, my research, and finishing up my PhD that I didn't invest in building a social network of friends that I could hang out with, either go out for dinner or lunch or grab a beer. And it's only in the past few years that I've started to develop this, and it didn't serve me so well. Of course, I was able to finish my PhD and so on, but at the end, I didn't have a good and close friend circle. And finally, my health in terms of exercise was not doing so well. So I had injured my knee in 2013, 2012, and I used to love running. But because of the injury, I had stopped running and biking and so on. And so I was doing a little bit of stretching, but nothing so intense. And I just didn't feel good because I wasn't exercising. I felt a little bloated. My face was puffed up, and it wasn't, I just didn't feel healthy inside myself. And then I think one of the most important parts of us is, and for me, this was a lack of purpose and meaning. Of course, when I started my PhD, I was really excited. Okay, I'm going to contribute to the scientific community. We're going to make some discoveries and, let's say, invent or create something that's going to help other people. But the reality for me was, I was like, who is this really going to serve? Of course, I made some discoveries that did help some people, or like people who, and software that I used in the cloud and so on, and by networking vendors. But I was really questioning the purpose of all of this, because at the end I felt some of it is self-serving. Okay, we're doing this for the sake of a paper, or this just seems like a nice idea to me or to us, but not many people are using this. So that sort of was getting to me as well. And I also noticed along the way that some collaborators were not really as invested in the work as I was, because I was really putting in a lot of effort. But some people have other priorities, or there are different interests, and they sort of collaborate because they want to help. And I think another important aspect is the sense of loneliness, because all of this combined, and people feel like, and I've at least spoken to other people as well, where they have a similar feeling, the sense of loneliness, where the PhD is you're on your own, you got to find and do things by yourself, and that doesn't feel so nice. And then there were other minor things as well. I mean, maybe not so minor, but there were others that I've classified as others right now. So there was the anxiety and uncertainty about short-term contracts. I think the postdocs.net, they have actually a paper on this, or they've done some amount of research and surveys on this. And then there was a conflict with a collaborator that I experienced that didn't feel really nice as well. And, the general requirements and demands of being in a partnership, having 1 or 2 kids, and running a household, this all exerts a toll on our mental health. And in particular, it definitely exerted a toll on my mental health as well. A sense of exhaustion and yeah. So those were some of the struggles that I experienced. And there was one moment that sort of triggered it, but I want to qualify when I say my personal transformation by saying that it didn't happen overnight. It's still an ongoing process. I don't claim to have the solutions, and I don't claim to be a person who has complete control over my mental health. But I believe that by making small changes over time, I have developed a better sense and understanding of myself, and also how I can handle my health, my physical and mental health as well. And so for me, the first point that sort of inspired me to change, based on the workload that I had and the lack of boundaries, was when I applied for what's called Software Campus. And so this is like a program in collaboration with the BMBF. And the way it works is we had like an application to fill out, and then there was like an interview process, and then we actually wrote out the proposal. And this was mainly for people in IT or computer science. And so I took this application process really seriously. And so I started reading about leadership and so on. And so for me, based on my background, I knew about the Harvard Business Review, and I noticed that they have a podcast, and I started to bike to work at that point. And I started to listen to this podcast, and I remember there were like this 1 or 2 episodes where they had interviewed some researchers who had worked with consultants and managers, and they asked these people to plan out their week. And what the result was from that study, to sort of simplify this in a nutshell, is that they noticed that the people who planned out their week ended up saving about 20% of their time. So if you think of that, that's 1 day out of a week. And that just blew my mind. I was like, okay, I think I really need to start doing this because I've got a lot going on right now. And this can definitely help me. And so I started doing that. And I started planning my week. And I noticed that I had more time for myself. And what that really helped was in reducing my anxiety because as soon as the weekend used to come, I'd be like, oh my God, this has to be done, that has to be done. I'm working on this paper. What about the results? Oh no, will it work? Will it not? But once I started to sort of plan out the week, see what I had to do, what my priorities were, that really gave me a sense of well-being in some sense, reduced my anxiety because I had a sense of control. What also helped was journaling. So every time, not every time, but most of the times I had certain strong emotions or feelings within me. Maybe it was like a heated discussion with my partner or something happened at work, with the conflict and so on. I started to write it down and just get it out of my mind. And that helped as well. So externalizing it onto paper sort of flushed it out of my system and made me feel better. And then there was this concept of the four burners theory that I came across from James Clear, who's the author of Atomic Habits, which is a great book. And what he mentioned, and I think he learned this from someone else, if I'm not mistaken, is that we can think of our lives as four burners on a stove. And it's not possible to have all the burners on full gas. So if we want to be successful in life, we can only have three burners running on full gas. And so one burner is health, the other is work, the third is family, and the fourth is friends, right? And so if you want to be really successful, then you can only have two burners running on full gas. And so when I came across this, it became so clear to me why I wasn't making any friends because I was just focusing on my work. I was then starting to focus on my health, and I was focused on my family. So my partner, my parents and sister, and other family members as well. And this combined with a gift that I received from my partner's parents was very helpful. So the gift was this book called Ein Guter Plan. And I'm not trying to advertise for them or anything, but it's a planner. And it's a planner designed with mindfulness and stress reduction. And it was really helpful. And so ever since I got that, I've been using that every year because what that did for me was it made me more aware of sort of the basic needs I need. So like, am I sleeping well? Every day I used to track that. So am I sleeping well? Did I drink enough water? My nutrition, hydration, was I productive or not? Was I happy? And some other markers as well. And then that sort of like really pushed me forward to keep track of my health. And so if you're interested, I would definitely suggest you check out that planner as well. So these were some of the aspects that led to my personal transformation. And so now I'd like to talk about what you can do to transform the way you work and live and essentially get control over your mental health. So the first off is what I've called over here as use brain extenders. And this term comes from the book, The Organized Mind by Dan Levitt. And the concept here is to essentially externalize everything. So anything, any idea or any thought or any, let's say, worry or anxiety inducing thought that comes up, just put it out on paper or on your computer over there. And this reduces cognitive load. And so cognitive load theory says that holding any information in our working memory exerts a toll on us. So it consumes energy, and so therefore we'll not be able to use those resources for something, let's say, more useful. So for me, the anxiety inducing part was, okay, all the things that I had to do. And so when I started to plan, when I made those plans, put it in the calendar, broke down the different tasks that I had to do, that really freed up my mind to be able to actually do something more meaningful. And so you can, it's not just about planning over here, right? It's about getting those thoughts out, or maybe speaking to the person or someone else, or using, let's say, devices and tools so that we don't have to hold things in our mind, but rather have it in an external place that we can easily get access to. Because I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but it's very easy to forget something, and that can also cause some frustration and worry as well. So make sure you use some kind of notebook or planner or whatever, or your computer to get things out. And then what helps is prioritization. And initially, like I mentioned, I used to say yes a lot, but prioritization also means saying no. And it also means understanding what has to be done right now. Is this really something urgent and important, or can this be pushed to the future? And so I think the Eisenhower matrix is a really popular one if you're not already familiar with this to use. So you have like 4 quadrants where you have, okay, these are the urgent tasks that have to be done, and these are the important tasks. And so it's really important to work on the urgent and important to get that out, and to also work on your important tasks as well. And if you can think of ways in which things that are urgent but not important, where you can delegate them or just not do them, do consider that. So like automation is huge. I mean, we live in a world of technology right now. If you can leverage technology to automate certain things, that definitely frees up your mind to actually be able to do something more meaningful, like your research or whatever it is that you're pursuing. I think prioritization is also about scheduling. So what can really help is to be aware of your own biology. And so for me, I'm a morning person, and we've all heard, either person's a morning person or they're a night owl. And so if you're a morning person, what the research is showing is that it's a really good time to focus on analytical tasks. So tasks that where you need vigilance, where you need to be able to stay alert and focus on something really deeply. Doing that in the morning is a really good idea. And so checking emails, maybe filling out a form or a report is probably more suitable for after lunch. So the noon to afternoon time is a good idea to have, let's say, maybe even a meeting where you have a status update or exchange certain ideas. And then there's actually a rebound. There's a rebound in energy, and the late afternoon, evening is a good time to work on those creative tasks. So, for example, if you were stuck on a problem and you couldn't find the solution in the morning, you might want to revisit it later on in the day, because that's when your brain sort of the energy level goes down. But what that helps in is sort of making those cross connections that can help you solve that problem in a creative way. Or so if you want to have, let's say, a brainstorming session, that's also a good time to have that. And so if you're a night owl, you simply want to invert this. So you want to start with your insight-based tasks in the morning and work on those analytical, deep focus tasks towards the later part of the day, or rather the evening or night. So that's about prioritization. The next one is about establishing and maintaining boundaries. And so I think most of us have experienced this during the COVID pandemic, right? And I think it was just smashed in our faces. We all had to stay back at home and then maybe even work as well, along with family and so on. And so what helps over here is to have physical and psychological boundaries. And so for me, what was really helpful was to have a wrap-up ritual, which also reduced rumination, which is a form of anxiety. And it's interesting because there was a Russian psychologist in Berlin. So I'm in Berlin right now, and she uncovered this phenomenon where we tend to remember unfinished tasks better than finished tasks. So what that means is at the end of the day or end of your work day, if we simply get up and leave, um, our mind is sort of still running. And so maybe while you're having dinner or after dinner, oh, I didn't do that. Or I've spoken to people in medical sciences where, they have, or life sciences where they actually run experiments and on real cells or real cells. And so if they don't follow their experiment protocol, then those cells could die, right? And so then that sort of worry, oh my God, will the cell not survive? Did I do everything right? And so the stakes are slightly higher over there. And so having some kind of, let's say, a wrap up ritual where, you review all the things that happened in the day and what was not completed, and then making a plan for that just like frees up working memory. And so we already feel that sense of relief because we have a plan for what we want to do next. And so we reduce cognitive load, which reduces anxiety, which allows us to be more present in the moment or focus on the tasks that we're actually doing. Other aspects of maintaining boundaries as well, and so this is sort of like it becomes physical and psychological, is where, at least for me, was to not have email on my phone. And so I just deleted the email app on my phone, and it works amazing. So I just have email on my laptop and my work laptop, and so I cannot check email on my personal device. And so it's freeing in some sense. And I don't have that feel, okay, do I need to check my phone now? Is there a new email? I know it's only possible over there. And that sort of splits or compartmentalizes my work and personal life as well. So I do that also with my work laptop. So I just leave my work laptop at work and come home. So there's no real chance of working, so to say, after work hours. The other aspect is that of commute. And so there were some articles on this during COVID pandemic. And in fact, Microsoft came up with this virtual commute tool that people were using. I'm not sure how many people actually used it, but it goes to show that commuting from and to work, so physical change in location, helps us sort of switch our minds, to go from, let's say, personal to professional, and vice versa. So if you can commute, if you have like a hybrid model at work, use that. What I was doing during the pandemic time was also I used to go for a bike ride. So I used to drop my daughter at the nanny daycare and then bike for a bit and then come back. And so when I'd pick her up also, that sort of like switched me on and off as well. And that's really, really effective because some form of exercise also makes us feel good. It releases some neurochemicals inside us. And at the same time, we sort of create these boundaries as well. And then there are the aspects of positive psychology. So this has to do with some of the most basic and fundamental aspects of our biology and neurology. And so if we follow this, we actually feel really good. And so the first one is on sleep. I cannot repeat myself more on this, but sleep is absolutely critical because there are certain chemicals in our brain that, or there are certain, let's say, chemicals that are only flushed out through sleep. And so if we don't do that, we're going to have this sort of foggy feel after we wake up, and that's only through sleep that we can feel better and re-energized. So it's really critical to get a good night's sleep. I'd qualify this with if you have kids, especially young children, it's very hard to control the quality of sleep, but get as much sleep as you can. It's definitely useful. Because a lack of sleep involves, moodiness the next day, and it's lack of willpower and so on. And so it's really important. The next one is on nutrition and hydration. So I'm not going to say there's a particular diet that's going to actually make you feel better, but find something that actually works for you and really live up to that, because we need lots of minerals, we need the vitamins, we need all those micronutrients, we need lots of healthy fats and proteins, omega-3 for our brain, and then we need lots of water. So please drink a lot of water and eat healthy, nutritious food that's actually going to make us feel good. And then there's social support, like I mentioned earlier, right? So we need people. We are social animals, and we crave a sense of belonging. We don't really want to feel lonely. We might want to feel alone. We might want to be by ourselves for some amount of time, but we don't want to feel lonely. And so having some kind of support system, maybe it's just a couple of people, or maybe it's 10 people, but it's really important to have people around us, because when we touch other people or other creatures, their release of oxytocin, which makes us feel good as well. And that's why it's so important. And I want to touch upon social support also by saying that there's also research that shows, when we are young, we have a lot of friends, but as our age progresses, as we get older, the number of friends we have reduces. Of course, people, as we get old, they sort of pass away. But what's really important is not the quantity of friends we have, but the quality of that social network that we have. And so I'd like to sort of encourage you to have more meaningful and authentic relationships with your social circle, rather than just focus on, oh, I have 30 friends, I have 40 friends, and so on. The next aspect would be on gratitude. So being thankful makes us think in a more positive way. We can be actually grateful for the things we have. There's also research, neuroscience research on this by Glenn Fox, that talks about how there are how our how power structures in the brain change when we actually express gratitude. And then there's breath work. And the way I realized how breath work can actually help us in stressful times, or why it's important to use our breath to control ourselves, our nervous system, especially when we are in a stressful situation, is because we can't think ourselves to being calm. Like if I'm in a moment where, it's okay, fight, flight, or freeze, I can't be thinking, hey, Kashyap, stay calm right now. It's going to be okay. What I can do that's actually going to make me stay calm or respond to that situation is to control my breathing, because there's a direct connection between our breath and our nervous system through certain nerves. And so when we breathe in, that induces a stress response, which activates the sympathetic nervous system. And then when we breathe out, that induces rest and digest response, which is more calming, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And so you can sort of use this to the situation you're in. So for example, if you are in a situation where you really want to focus, or you think it's stressful, note that stress over here doesn't necessarily mean that it's exhausting or it's negative. Stress can actually be a good thing. It could be just like, you're riding your bike and then you have to go over a bump, and that's sort of like a stressful situation as well. So we can use our breath to focus. So that can help us focus. And we can use our breathing to also calm down by having a short inhalation and a longer exhalation. And so by doing that, I can already feel a little calmer right now. That can help us relax a little more. And then there's mindfulness. So research out of Harvard, I think in 2012, they identified that a source of unhappiness was not being present in the moment. And so one way to think of that is if you want to be more happy, simply just be more present in the moment, focus on whatever it is you're doing. And then there's exercise. So I kind of mentioned exercise earlier, but exercise is super, super helpful because it releases neurochemicals in the brain that are so useful in making us feel good. You know, you have all these endorphins, and then there's a neurochemical called anandamide, which comes from the word anand in Hindi, which means happiness, which is it's kind of cool. So anandamide makes us feel good, and then you have dopamine, serotonin, and some other endocannabinoid as well. And then finally, there's nature immersion. So spending time in nature, in the woods, in the forest, by the lake. I know in Germany, a lot of people like visiting the lakes to go for a swim. Spending time near water has also shown, or living close to water can have a significant impact on our well-being. And then the last part of what you can do is on handling stress and recovery. So what I mean by this is that it's really, as much as we like to, work and go, let's just keep working from the time we wake up to the time we sleep. That doesn't help us at all. In fact, that's actually very counterproductive because there are, again, certain chemicals in the brain or in our body that build up fatigue that can only be flushed by taking a break. And so think about this physically. If you've ever tried to do like 10 push-ups, for example, or let's say your goal is to do 100 push-ups, is it possible to do all those 100 push-ups at once? Probably not, unless you've really practiced. But if you break it up into, I'm going to do 10 push-ups now, take a break, 10, 10, 10, 10, that actually helps because then you have those stressful moments followed by some kind of recovery. And so our biology works like that as well. We have what's called ultradian rhythms, and these are sort of 90-minute cycles where in these 90 minutes, we are able to really push through, but then we need some kind of recovery, some kind of break. Over here on the slide, it's 20 minutes. If it's possible, that's good. If not, at least a few minutes can help you recover from those, let's say, heightened state of arousal or stressful moments. And so what can you do to recover is also helpful because there's what's known as active recovery and passive recovery. So passive recovery, so for example, if you're taking a break after, let's say, working on a paper for an hour or so, probably watching something on your screen is not helpful because that's passive and it activates the visual cortex, but you're sort of like, you're accepting information, you're processing information, but you're not really like acting on it. So it's not so helpful. What's actually helpful is what's known as active recovery. So, maybe splashing cold water on your face. So Josh Waitzkin, the author of Art of Learning, he's one of the famous American chess players who then turned into a Tai Chi master. And he also talked about this, where during his chess games, he'd used to splash cold water on his face and go sprint around so that he was able to focus, because those chess games were not just for like half an hour or so, they were for a number of hours. And so to be able to sustain focus for such long amount of time, he had to do some things. And that's what he used to do. But so over here, I have a list of a number of active recovery protocols you could follow to recover from those stressful moments. And of course, I'm not saying you can you have the opportunity to go into a flotation tank while you're working, but what you could do is maybe you could do some breath work, you could stretch, you could maybe take a nap, or you could practice some belly laughing if you're working from home, obviously. I started doing that with my daughter and she loved it. She keeps asking me to just laugh randomly, which is cute. Um, and then there's also aimless play. If you have children, that's actually really helpful. They're actually natural at this. But as an adult, it takes a little more practice to, let go of all those rules and so on. And then there's stretching, or, using the foam roller, that's myofascial release, that can help as well. But one thing to note on active recovery is if you have certain conditions like PTSD, or if you have a cold, or you're in general not feeling well, cold exposure might not actually be useful because it induces a stress response, and then we might actually get stuck in that sympathetic response, and that's not what we want. So you might want to consult your doctor on what might work better for you, especially when you're dealing with temperature and so on. So with that, I'd like to wrap up and sort of briefly summarize what I talked about right now. So I shared some of the specific struggles I experienced during my academic life that impacted my mental health. And I talked about some of the changes I made to my life and what you can do as well to handle some of the stressors and help you support and promote your mental health. With that, I have a feedback form. If you could scan the QR code and fill it out, that would be really, really helpful. And I'd be really grateful for that because it would help me improve. And I'd kind of get to know whether this was actually useful to you or not. And I'd like to stop here and take any questions. I think we